perhaps because she had ignored him the first 17 years of her life. It was still a mystery to him how that had changed. "Go now. Ragnall is watching us," he said, when he felt her older brother's eyes on him. Unlike Moira and Connor, Ragnall had their father's fair hair, bull-like build, and short temper. He was also the only warrior in the clan Duncan was not certain he could defeat at arms. "I won't go until you say you'll meet me later." Moira folded her arms, but amusement quirked up the corners of her full lips, reminding Duncan that this was a game to her. Yet if the chieftain learned that Duncan was sneaking off with his only daughter, he would murder him on the spot. Duncan turned and left the hall without bothering to answer her. Moira knew he would be there. As he waited for her in the dark, he listened to the soft lap of the sea on the shore. There was no mist on the misty Isle of Skye tonight, and Dunscaith Castle was beautiful, ablaze with torchlight against the clear night sky. He had grown up in the castle and seen this sight 1,000 times, but Duncan was a young man who took nothing for granted. His mother had served as nursemaid to the chieftain's children, and he and Connor had been best friends since the cradle. From the time they could lift wooden swords, the two of them and Connor's cousins, Alex and Ian, had trained in the art of war. When they weren't practicing with their weapons, they were off looking for adventure, or trouble, and they usually found it. Moira had always been apart, a coddled princess dressed in finery. Duncan had had little to do with this lovely wee creature, whose laughter often filled the castle. Duncan heard the rustle of silk skirts and turned to see Moira running toward him. Even in the dark and covered head to toe in a cloak, he could pick her out of 1,000 women. Though she could not possibly see what was in her path, Moira ran headlong, expecting no impediment. No stone tripped her, for even the fairies favoured this lass. When Moira threw her arms around his neck, Duncan closed his eyes and lost himself in her womanly softness. He breathed in the scent of her hair, and it was like lying in a field of wildflowers. "It's been 2 whole days," she said. "I missed you so much." Duncan was amazed at how unguarded Moira was. The lass said whatever came into her head, with no caution, no fear of rejection. But then, who would refuse her? The chieftain had sent Duncan to attend university in the lowlands with Connor and Connor's cousins, and he'd learned about Helen of Troy there. Moira had a face like that, the kind that could start a clan war. And worse for his jealous heart, she had lush curves and an innate sensuality that made every man want her. The other men only lusted after her for her beauty, but for Duncan, Moira was the bright spark in his world. Moira pulled him down into a deep kiss that sent him reeling. Before he knew it, his hands were roaming over the feminine dips and swells of her body, and she was moaning into his mouth. They were in danger of dropping to the grass at their feet, where anyone could happen upon them, so he broke the kiss. One of them had to keep their head, and it wouldn't be Moira. "Not here," he said, though he damn well knew what they would do if they went to the cave. Anticipation caused every fibre of his being to throb with need. For the first weeks, they had found ways to please each other without committing the last irrevocable sin, the one that could cost Duncan his life if his chieftain knew of it. He felt guilty for taking what rightfully belonged to Moira's future husband, but it was a miracle that he'd held out against her as long as he had. At least he was confident that Moira would not suffer for what they had done. She was a clever lass. She would not be the first to spill a vial of sheep's blood on her wedding sheet, and Moira was not one to be troubled by guilt. Once they were inside the cave, they spread the blanket they kept there, and Duncan pulled her onto his lap. "The Irish chieftain's son is rather amusing," Moira said, poking her finger in his side. Moira's father had not taken another wife after Connor and Moira's mother died, so when they had guests, Moira sat on one side of her father, charming them, while her older brother Ragnall sat on his other side, frightening them. "The man was looking down the front of your gown all through supper." And Duncan thought Moira let him. "I want to crush his head between my hands." All his life he'd minded his temper, both because he was bigger than other lads and because his position was precarious. He hated the way Moira made him lose control.